The story begins with En Hao, a single father, works hard to support his little daughter. One day, he notices her drawings have lost all color, and her picture book is now dull and empty. After talking to her teacher, he learns she may be suffering from depression. Realizing how much he's neglected her, he feels guilty and takes leave from work to care for her. Unfortunately, his team is in the middle of an important project, and his absence causes chaos. The leaders are furious, and En Hao soon faces pressure and tension at work, but he remains firm in putting his daughter's well-being first. After some days, when En Hao finally returns, he's immediately given a new task. A rival company's headhunter is trying to lure away one of their key employees, Lao Liang, who also happens to be an old friend of En Hao. Confident that their friendship can solve everything, En Hao sets out to stop Lao Liang from leaving, not realizing that he's walking right into a trap. Later, En Hao discovers that Lao Liang has taken a sudden leave. Seeing a strange note on the schedule, he senses something isn't right. Meanwhile, Lao Liang is already meeting the headhunter, a woman who promises him a better future, a company that will fund his research and give him the recognition he deserves. Just as Lao Liang is about to accept the offer, En Hao appears out of nowhere, interrupting the deal. Startled and embarrassed, Lao Liang runs off, while En Hao tries to convince the woman to back off, warning her not to underestimate Lao Liang's loyalty. On their way down the mountain after the meeting, it gets dark. Both of them use their phone lights to see the path, but when the woman's phone dies, En Hao quietly turns his light toward her feet to help her walk safely. She accepts his silent kindness, and they continue down together in uneasy peace. A few days later, En Hao hosts a small reunion for his longtime colleagues, loyal employees who have fought for the company for years. Among them is Lao Liang. During the gathering, En Hao brings out an old, outdated phone, the first product they ever built together. As they reminisce about the old days, the tension softens, and En Hao gently asks Lao Liang to delay his decision and think again before leaving. The next morning, Lao Liang travels to his son's basketball game. On the way, he finally refuses the headhunter's offer. When the woman drops him off, she realizes En Hao has once again interfered and ruined her plan. Furious, she drives away in anger. That night, En Hao's colleagues throw a small celebration to congratulate him on completing his mission. But their happiness doesn't last long. The team leader suddenly shows up and begins humiliating En Hao in front of everyone, calling him useless and a waste of time. He even skips En Hao's toast, making the moment awkward. Yet, as a single father struggling to keep his job, En Hao swallows his pride and still pours the leader another drink with a smile. The leader accepts it for a second, then coldly switches cups and tells someone else to pour for him, leaving En Hao standing there in silence. After the party, En Hao helps the drunk leader into a taxi and bows politely, still showing respect despite everything. But the next day, the leader deliberately gives him a demeaning task, sorting meeting materials, something usually done by interns. Even so, En Hao remains calm, smiling as he completes the job. When the meeting begins, he's full of confidence, ready to present the results of his hard work over the past 2 weeks. But before he can even start, the leader cuts him off and kicks him out of the room. En Hao tries to defend himself, hoping to prove the value of his effort, but his words are met with nothing but mockery. At this point, En Hao feels his anger rising to the limit, as if he's about to explode. Yet instead of lashing out, he forces himself to stay calm and quietly hands the project files to his colleague. He tries to hold his breath and suppress his frustration, but the more he thinks about the unfair treatment, the angrier he becomes. For a moment, he even thinks about quitting. But then, reality hits him. His daughter's tuition, living expenses, and his mounting loans leave him no choice but to swallow his pride and continue working in silence. The next day, things only get worse. The team leader bursts into rage, accusing En Hao of being connected to Lao Liang, who has just resigned and supposedly taken confidential company documents with him. The leader claims that En Hao helped Liang stall for time so he could steal the files, and then blames him for the entire leak. Shocked and furious, En Hao tries to reach Liang, but his calls go unanswered. With no other option, he seeks out the headhunter who once tried to recruit Liang, demanding to know the truth and accusing her of having no professional ethics, doing whatever it takes to poach employees. Just then, En Hao receives a message from Liang, asking to meet at the airport. He rushes there immediately, confused and anxious. He knows Liang has already been kicked out of the project and can't believe he would betray the company. Deep down, he's sure Liang only wants to go abroad to earn money and support his family. However, before he can uncover the truth, a colleague calls to inform him that his own position has been revoked. It's clear now that the leader is setting him up. When he checks, he discovers that on the leader's computer, the person listed as responsible for leaking the confidential documents is none other than himself. Realizing he's been framed, En Hao can do nothing but accept the painful reality of being fired. Meanwhile, the headhunter's name is revealed to be Jiang Zhiying, a capable yet exhausted woman who, despite being the president of a headhunting company, lives under constant stress. With no secretary to help her, she handles everything alone, scheduling meetings, organizing files, and dealing with endless piles of paperwork. Her office is always a mess, and sometimes she even finds her missing phone in the trash bin. The chaos slows her down, forcing her to work late every night until exhaustion overtakes her. To fall asleep, she now relies on sleeping pills just to make it through each day. The following morning, Ziying tries to prepare for a client meeting, but ends up making the office even messier. Seeing this, her assistant, Miss Xu, quietly steps in to help, not wanting to disrupt her schedule. Over time, Mrs. Xu realizes how mentally drained Ziying has become and decides to find her a competent secretary as soon as possible. One late night, just as Mrs. Xu is about to go home, Ziying returns looking pale and agitated. Ms. Xu gently urges her to rest, but Ziying insists on continuing her work, until she suddenly collapses to the floor. When her colleagues rush in, they find her panicking and weak. It turns out she's fainted from exhaustion and stress. The next day, while recovering at work, Ziying notices a familiar figure entering the office. It's Enhao. Startled, she tries to remain composed, though her expression instantly hardens. Ms. Chu steps forward to make an introduction, explaining that this is the company's new secretary, Mr. Enhao. Ziying is taken aback, recognizing him immediately but saying nothing. It turns out that Ms. Chu is the wife of one of Enhao's old classmates. A few days earlier, she and her husband had visited Enhao's home, where she was surprised by how organized and meticulous he was. His clothes were neatly arranged, the house spotless, and even the items in his refrigerator were labeled and sorted. When Enhao's daughter accidentally spilled juice, he calmly handled the situation, wiping it up without a trace of panic and easing the tension with a gentle smile. Watching this, Ms. Chu realized that he was the kind of person who could handle any situation with calm and precision, the perfect candidate for Ziying's secretary. When she offered him the position, Enhao immediately refused, remembering their heated argument from before. However, Ms. Xu persuaded him by offering flexible hours so he could spend more time with his daughter, and even promising to give up half her own salary to make it possible. Thinking of his responsibilities as a father, Enhao reluctantly agrees. But when he reports to work the next day, he instantly regrets it. Ziying, still holding a grudge from their past conflict, treats him coldly and makes things difficult. Even so, Enhao endures the hostility without complaint. He needs this job for his daughter's sake, and with quiet determination, he tells Ziying that if she just gives him a chance, he'll prove himself and do his very best. Ziying doesn't appreciate what just happened. After all, not long ago, she had scolded herself for being immoral, and with that thought weighing on her, she drives away in silence. Meanwhile, Enhao assumes he's about to be fired, but Miss Xu hurries over to comfort him, encouraging him to stay strong and not give up no matter what. She then introduces him to the rest of the office staff, and as soon as they learn he's Ziying's new secretary, everyone greets him warmly, because to them, his arrival means freedom from their boss's endless demands. However, a few kind colleagues quietly pull him aside and warn him it's not too late to quit while he still can. Later that afternoon, Ziying finally returns and completely ignores Enhao, leaving Miss Xu no choice but to push him into work. To start, she tells him to familiarize himself with Ziying's projects, so Enhao spends the entire night going through all of the company's files and schedules. The next morning, feeling proud, he organizes everything neatly and places it on Ziying's desk, hoping for a word of praise. Instead, Ziying glances at the documents, frowns, and slams them down angrily. Confused, Enhao turns to Ms. Chu, who gently explains that Ziying is extremely particular. Even the bookmarks on her files must be placed exactly at a 45-degree angle, or she won't even look at them. Not long after, Ziying sends him out to buy coffee. Enhao walks through 3 alleys before finally finding the 4th cafe that meets her standards. The coffee has to be at the perfect temperature, not too hot and not too cold. After waiting in line and rushing back as fast as he can, he hands it to her, only for Ziying to take one sip and toss it straight into the trash. From that moment on, Enhao realizes he must watch every detail carefully, because even the smallest mistake can set her off. Since Ziying doesn't need him all the time, Enhao begins helping another colleague, Qi Liang, and soon becomes quite popular in the office. Seeing how easily others praise him makes Ziying increasingly irritated. Even though she already has a secretary, she continues assigning her own tasks to Ms. Zhu instead of trusting Enhao. Eventually, Miss Zhu loses her patience and argues with Ziying, reminding her that she's the one who said she didn't like Enhao. She then declares that from now on, she'll no longer interfere, and that all secretarial work will be handled by him alone. But even then, Ziying refuses to admit defeat. Determined to win her approval, Enhao starts paying extra attention to every little thing. His schedules become flawless, the documents perfectly aligned, and the coffee exactly as she likes it. Slowly, Zhiying's attitude softens, and for the first time, she begins to accept him as her secretary. One morning, though, she wakes up from a nightmare and remains tense the entire day. It's the anniversary of her father's death. Enhao notices her unease and quietly brings her some painkillers, but instead of thanking him, Zhiying snaps that a secretary's job is to follow orders, not meddle in personal matters. Later, a client calls, saying that all 3 candidates Zhiying had recommended have withdrawn. Realizing something is wrong, she storms over to a rival company, where she confronts Representative Jin, her former superior. She warns him to stop using dirty tricks, but he reminds her of the past, when her decisions had led to a colleague's downfall. Holding on to that grudge, he mocks her, and Zhiying leaves feeling crushed by the weight of pressure and guilt. Just when she feels ready to give up, Enhao shows up at the right moment and convinces her to take a break. They end up eating together at a roadside stall where Zhiying boldly orders 2 servings of devil spicy. Watching his boss eat so confidently, Enhao asks if it isn't too hot, and she replies that she can't lose to him. Amused, he joins her, even though he can't handle spicy food. When Zhiying realizes this, she teasingly asks why he didn't say anything, then remembers her earlier words, that he shouldn't interfere in others' affairs. Feeling a bit embarrassed but too proud to admit it, she continues eating in silence while Enhao quietly smiles, realizing she's finally starting to warm up to him. Enhao wants to tell Zhiying to eat more slowly, but remembering her dislike for people meddling in her affairs, he keeps quiet. When he notices how calmly she eats the spicy noodles, he instinctively pours her a glass of water but quickly pulls his hand back, realizing his mistake. Zhiying glances at him without saying a word, and from that look alone, Enhao understands to stay in his place. As time passes, Zhiying gradually begins to accept him as her secretary. One evening, encouraged by her, Enhao decides to try the devil spicy dish himself. The moment he takes a bite, he regrets it and gulps down an entire drink in desperation. Seeing his reaction, Zhiying can't help but smile for the first time. On their way back, Enhao remembers how she loves sweets, so he folds a small paper frog and places a candy inside, shyly handing it to her. The next night, while working overtime, Enhao brings Zhiying a late-night snack. As he walks past the staff room, he overhears a few colleagues complaining that Zhiying is cold and heartless, someone who never cares about others' feelings. Before he can speak, Zhiying suddenly appears behind them, her face dark with anger. She storms back to her office, furious. A few minutes later, one of the secretaries goes in to comfort her, but Zhiying lashes out, saying her employees never try to solve problems on their own, and that they should learn to think from someone else's perspective, like Enhao. Meanwhile, at Enhao's home, his young daughter Xiaoxin is trying to reach a drawing placed high on a shelf. Just then, Zhiying walks in and takes it down for her. Xiaoxin quickly thanks her, but Zhiying coldly says it's not for her. When Xiaoxin asks if she can keep it, Zhiying mocks her for being childish and tells her to focus on reading real books instead. The little girl, annoyed, asks what kind of adult would even want a top drawing when there are so many other books to read. What Xiaoxin doesn't know is that this strict woman will soon become her stepmother, and that her father is the secretary of this very woman. Later that night, when Enhao goes to Zhiying's office to deliver some documents, he finds the place in complete disarray and doesn't know where to begin cleaning. The next morning, Zhiying enters the office, places her bag on the sofa as usual, and watches it slide off onto a shelf. Only then does she notice that everything around her looks different. All the documents are neatly arranged and clearly labeled. Realizing that Enhao organized everything according to her habits to make her work easier, she feels a quiet warmth in her heart. That night, as they both stay late in the office, Zhiying feels a rare sense of comfort and gratitude. Feeling slightly guilty, she pours a cup of coffee for Enhao herself. She even jokes that she accidentally pressed the machine twice. As they share coffee, the conversation flows more naturally. Then, Enhao suddenly excuses himself and comes back with a small window sticker, explaining that he noticed she once hurt her hand while working and couldn't grip the cup properly. Zhiying is touched by his attentiveness. His gentle way of helping her dress the wound softened something inside her that she thought had long been frozen. Later, when Enhao drives her home, he realizes she's fallen asleep in the back seat. Not wanting to wake her, he quietly drives around the neighborhood, slowing down so she can rest longer. Just moments before she wakes, he stops smoothly in front of her house. Zhiying, realizing what he did, thanks him softly and tells him he's worked hard. The next day at work, Zhiying visits a hotel to negotiate over their attempt to hire away one of her company's head chefs. During the meeting, the chef agrees to switch jobs but insists on bringing his assistant along. Zhiying doesn't think much of it and reviews the assistant's file, discovering that the young man is talented but largely overlooked. However, during the negotiation, she overhears whispers that the chef and his assistant might share an inappropriate relationship. Although the chef is known to be strict, he apparently treats his assistant with unusual affection. As rumors spread among colleagues, the situation begins to tarnish the company's reputation, and management ultimately decides to revoke the chef's qualification, leaving Zhiying caught in the middle of yet another professional and emotional conflict. And Hao insists on getting to the bottom of the situation before making any judgment, believing there might be more to the story. Zhiying agrees to let him investigate, and soon, Hao starts secretly observing the chef. He notices that the man can barely hold a cup with his right hand, which makes him suspicious. After further questioning, he learns the truth. The chef was in a serious car accident 2 years ago that damaged the nerves in his wrist. Although he recovered after surgery, the pain recently returned. The assistant, knowing about his condition, had been covering for him out of loyalty, while the chef feared losing his career because of his disability. After some thought, Zhiying decides to explain the situation honestly to the hotel management. Impressed by the chef's skills, they still agree to hire him, but to avoid gossip, they refuse to take the assistant. However, once the chef secures his position, he immediately distances himself from the assistant who had sacrificed so much to help him. Heartbroken and humiliated, the assistant becomes the target of workplace gossip and bullying. Seeing this, Zhiying recognizes his true potential and uses her influence to help him find a new job where he can finally pursue his dream as a chef. After this incident, Hao begins to see a softer, more compassionate side of Zhiying. He also starts to understand that being a headhunter isn't just about filling positions. It's about helping people find a place where they can truly shine. While the two share this realization, it suddenly starts raining. The awkward tension between them slowly eases as they rush under Hao's umbrella, which unfortunately breaks moments later. Laughing, they hurry to a nearby convenience store to wait out the rain. Zhiying glances at a group of students happily eating instant noodles and quietly swallows her craving. Noticing this, Hao decides to impress her in his own way. He prepares a steaming bowl of spicy rice cake instant noodles, topping it with sliced sausages and melted cheese. Zhiying's favorite comfort food. His thoughtful gestures don't stop there. Whether it's handing her an umbrella when it rains, a napkin during lunch, or a small piece of bread when she's tired, Hao always seems to anticipate her needs. Everyone in the office starts joking that he's like Doraemon, always prepared for everything. But soon, this perfect secretary faces new trouble because of his colleagues. One late night at the office, Hao meets a new employee named Jinghua. After helping him with some work, Hao advises him not to overwork himself and to take care of his health. However, Jinghua, eager to prove himself, pushes too hard. A few days later, a major conflict arises. One of their important clients, Mr. Piao, gets taken away by another employee, Jing Kachang. All of Jinghua's hard work for the past month suddenly seems wasted. Frustrated, he publicly confronts Jing Kachang, accusing him of stealing his client and demanding that he return him, arguing that he had built the initial connection and spent countless hours working on the proposal. Jing Kachang calmly replies that if Mr. Piao preferred Jinghua's plan, he wouldn't have approached him instead, implying that it wasn't about stealing but about competence. Their argument grows intense, forcing Zhiying to intervene. She calls them both into her office and reprimands them for being too focused on competition and performance, instead of truly considering their clients' needs. After this, the atmosphere between the two becomes tense, casting a shadow over the entire team. Wanting to ease the situation, Hao suggests holding a small team party to rebuild morale. Zhiying agrees, though she reminds him that it shouldn't become an excuse to slack off. That evening, the team gathers for the party, and Hao skillfully arranges for Jinghua and Jing Kachang to sit together. At first, the mood is awkward, but thanks to the department head, Chief Jin, one who lightens the atmosphere with his famously bad jokes, the tension gradually melts away. By the end of the night, both men share a laugh, and the strained bond between them begins to heal, bringing warmth and teamwork back to the office once again. At this time, Zhiying, who is busy working late, never expects to be distracted by a text from Hao. In his usual gentle tone, Hao asks if Zhiying is still at work, reminds her not to skip dinner, and adds that she can call if there's anything she needs. He even sends the address for a small company party later that evening. It's clear that married life has changed Hao. His thoughtful words easily touch Zhiying's heart. Later, Zhiying shows up at the gathering, a place she's never been to before, and to everyone's surprise, she quickly becomes the center of attention. Her polite manners and quiet charm make her stand out, and her colleagues can't help but tease and admire her. They say that a woman who helps others by blocking their drinks is the most attractive, especially when that woman happens to be as graceful as Hao's secretary. After the party, Enhao offers to take Jiying home himself. However, while he steps away to get a taxi, Jiying, already tipsy, quietly slips back to the office instead. By the time Enhao returns, he finds Jiying fast asleep on the office sofa. Worried that she might catch a cold, Enhao gently closes the window and carefully drapes a blanket over her. Sometime later, Jiying wakes to the sound of rain outside and is startled to see Enhao still there, sitting beside her. Dazed and still under the influence of alcohol, Jiying leans toward him, softly tracing his lips and whispering his name. Enhao, suddenly awake, looks into Jiying's eyes and without thinking, he kisses her. In that quiet, emotional moment, both are lost in the tension between confusion and desire. But when morning comes, Jiying, now sober, assumes everything that happened was just a dream. Even when Enhao insists that nothing happened between them that night, Jiying finds herself unexpectedly drawn to him. Without realizing it, she begins to fall in love, sketching Enhao's face on paper and secretly admiring his side profile during work. To distract herself from these feelings, she visits a bookstore to read about dream interpretations, hoping to make sense of what she felt. While there, she unexpectedly runs into Enhao's daughter, and the two soon become friends. Around the same time, Jiying's company receives a sudden small order from a well-known online luxury brand that urgently needs an expert consultant. Since experienced workers are often poached by competitors, Jiying quickly shortlists 3 potential candidates: a customs officer skilled in identifying counterfeit goods, a famous online appraiser who's appeared on TV, and a seasoned tax-free shop manager with 20 years of experience. However, just a day before submitting the candidates, a rival company led by Representative Jin manages to snatch their chosen expert. Furious, Jiying scolds her colleague Xiao Li and demands that he find 3 even better people immediately. Xiao Li tries his best, making endless calls but with little success. Then during lunch, Jiying unexpectedly receives another call from Enhao, who jokingly says that if a mechanic knows cars best, then surely a mechanic who repairs luxury cars must know luxury items even better. Inspired by this idea, the two begin searching and eventually find an old car repairman with 37 years of experience. But to their surprise, the man turns out to have only an elementary school education and is already planning to retire, ending their hopeful discovery on an ironic note. Enhao gently encourages Jiying, telling her that her hands are truly special but must have gone through a lot of hardship over the years. Later that evening, when Enhao returns home, his 7-year-old daughter excitedly tells him that her kindergarten is hosting an overnight event on Friday. Realizing he'll finally have some free time, Enhao decides to invite a few colleagues over for dinner. However, to his surprise, Jiying politely refuses. A few days earlier, Jiying had found Enhao's small green dinosaur keychain, the same one from the night she thought was just a dream. That discovery makes her realize that what happened between them wasn't imaginary at all. Confused and hurt, she finally confronts Enhao, asking why he pretended not to remember. Caught off guard, Enhao struggles to explain himself, and in the end, Jiying suggests they simply act as if nothing ever happened. Despite both of them clearly having feelings for each other, their pride and hesitation once again keep them apart. Afterwards, Jiying can't stop thinking about how warmly Enhao had invited her to dinner earlier that day. Giving in to her longing, she decides to bring a beautifully packed cake to Enhao's house as a surprise. But when she rings the bell, she's startled to find the place completely empty. Confused, she soon learns that the dinner party was cancelled because no one else could attend. Enhao had sent a message in the company group chat, but forgot that Jiying wasn't part of it. Feeling awkward, Enhao quickly closes the door, leaving Jiying standing outside, disheartened. A moment later, however, Enhao reconsiders and rushes out to stop her. Seeing Jiying's embarrassed face, he kindly invites her back in to share dinner together. Inside, Enhao surprises her again. He turns out to be a surprisingly skilled cook, preparing a delicious meal with homemade sauce that instantly wins Jiying's heart. The warm and cozy atmosphere between them makes everything feel natural, and after the meal, Jiying drifts off to sleep on the sofa while Enhao takes a call from his daughter. Later in the night, Jiying stirs from a nightmare about her painful childhood, only to find Enhao quietly comforting her. By morning, when she finally wakes up, she realizes with embarrassment that she spent the entire night at Enhao's house. Startled, she jumps up and accidentally steps on Enhao's hand. The awkward moment reminds Enhao of his daughter's recent request for him to find a girlfriend. Just then, realizing his daughter will be home soon, the two panic and decide to leave before she arrives. But as fate would have it, the moment they step out of the elevator, they run into Enhao's daughter Xiaoxin, and the neighbor who secretly has feelings for Enhao. Flustered, Enhao quickly ushers Jiying out of the building, trying to avoid any misunderstanding. Later, when Jiying returns home, she's shocked to realize that the little girl she once met at her best friend's husband's bookstore is actually Enhao's daughter. Trying to piece everything together, she meets with her friend and colleague Xu Lixi, who also serves as Enhao's assistant, to ask about his divorce. However, Lixi admits he doesn't know much, only that Enhao and his ex-wife were once college classmates, got married soon after graduating, and had a daughter named Xiaoxin. But their marriage lasted only a year before ending in divorce. Hearing this story, Xu Lixi suddenly notices how emotional Jiying seems, and teasingly questions why she looks so affected by someone else's past. Embarrassed, Jiying explains that she just wants to understand more about her colleague, saying with a faint smile that Xu Lixi once told her to care more about the staff. She then mentions how devoted Enhao is as a single father, how he raises his daughter alone despite his demanding career, which makes Jiying quietly admire him even more. Meanwhile, Xiaoxin, unaware of her father's growing connection with Jiying, tells Enhao that the nice sister she met at the bookstore is her favorite person, and that she hopes her dad will introduce them properly next time. The next day, Jiying meets with Mr. Chen, the manager of a luxury brand platform, but he seems dissatisfied with the candidates she's recommended. Confident in her judgment, Jiying suggests that he test Miss Zhao's ability before making a decision. Just then, one of the secretaries rushes in with bad news. A post is circulating online claiming that one of the luxury bags sold on their platform is fake. The rumor, as it turns out, was spread by Jiying's rival, Representative Jin, to damage her reputation. Miss Zhao, however, remains calm. After analyzing the bag's details from the photos, she insists with 90% certainty that it's genuine. To help clear the brand's name, she personally examines the product and confirms her judgment with full confidence. Still, Mr. Chen refuses to believe her until the bag is officially verified. Meanwhile, Representative Jin's team continues to fuel the online backlash, and even self-proclaimed luxury experts join in to mock the company for hiring someone they call a tailor pretending to be a specialist. Seeing how hurt Ms. Zhao is by the public criticism, Jiying and Enhao visit her shop to offer support. There, they meet Ms. Zhao's daughter, who admits that she had begged her mother to quit because of all the pressure. Hearing that, Ms. Zhao doesn't get angry. Instead, she softly explains that her work is not just about making money. It's something she takes deep pride in, much like how Enhao takes pride in his own job. Touched by her sincerity, her daughter finally understands and decides to support her mother's career. A few days later, the bag is officially verified and confirmed to be authentic, clearing Ms. Zhao's name completely. Mr. Chen, impressed by her skill and integrity, hires her without hesitation. Overjoyed, Miss Zhao gifts Jiying a handmade card holder as a token of gratitude and gives Enhao 2 tickets to her daughter's upcoming piano concert. Elsewhere, Representative Jin, furious over his failure, begins plotting new ways to sabotage Jiying. The following morning, Xu Lixi notices something unusual. Jiying has dressed up beautifully for work, clearly more radiant than usual. It turns out Enhao had invited her to attend the concert with him, and though she tries to act casual, she can't hide her excitement. However, when she arrives at the office, she overhears that Enhao will be working outside that day, leaving her slightly disappointed. Later, while she's still thinking about him, her phone buzzes. It's a message from Enhao asking her to meet him at the concert after work. Her mood instantly brightens. The rest of the day, she checks her watch again and again, counting the hours until she can leave. As soon as work ends, she rushes out, buys 2 cups of coffee, and waits eagerly by the concert hall entrance. Just as she's about to walk inside, she feels a sudden spark and turns around. There, in the middle of the crowd, stands Enhao, looking warm and effortlessly charming. Their eyes meet, and without a single word, both start walking toward each other, their hearts quietly aligning amid the soft music and murmuring crowd. In that moment, surrounded by the glow of the concert lights, the distance between them finally begins to close. Jiying slowly begins to realize her growing feelings for Enhao. As she watches his gentle hands move gracefully under the soft concert lights, her heartbeat quickens with the rhythm of the music. After the performance, she splashes cold water on her face in the restroom, silently reminding herself to stay calm and collected. When she steps back out, her eyes find Enhao in the crowd, elegant, composed, and glowing like the moon in a dark sky. Unable to resist the pull between them, she walks toward him, and soon the two stroll side by side toward the parking lot, their quiet laughter and glances saying what words cannot. For a brief moment, it feels like their hearts are finally in sync. From that night on, Jiying changes completely. She starts noticing every little thing about Enhao, waiting for him by the elevator, remembering his favorite food, and finding excuses to see him. But her growing affection begins to affect her focus at work. Even when Enhao hands her a document, she gets distracted by his presence. Realizing how unprofessional she's become, Ziying storms into Shu Lishi's office and requests to hire another female secretary to replace In Hao. Shocked, Shu assumes something serious happened between them and immediately calls In Hao in to find out the truth. Later that evening, while In Hao walks Ziying home, he can't hold back his curiosity and finally asks why she wants to replace him. Thinking she might be unhappy with his work, he's surprised when Ziying quietly confesses that it's her own feelings causing the problem. She admits that being around him makes her lose focus, and she wants to distance herself to regain control. Hearing this, In Hao is left speechless. That night, he sits alone at home, gulping down bottles of cold water, unsure whether to feel hurt or understanding. The next day, Ziying begins avoiding him completely. She makes sure they're never alone in the same room, assigns him separate meetings, and even refuses the lunch he buys for her. After work, she no longer lets him drive her home. Days pass like this until guilt starts to weigh on her. Slowly, she begins softening her attitude, thanking him for his effort, and even acknowledging the reports he stays up late to complete. After one meeting, she spots In Hao asleep in the car, exhausted from working through the night. Feeling a wave of tenderness, she quietly stands outside to block the harsh sunlight from his face, watching over him in silence. Later that evening, In Hao visits his close friend's bookstore, sharing a few drinks as he opens up about his feelings. He admits that he's been in love with someone for a while but has kept quiet because of his daughter. He doesn't want to drag someone into his complicated life. His friend gently advises him to be honest instead, that sometimes what a person wants isn't protection, but genuine, heartfelt love. Meanwhile, fate once again brings Ziying and Xiaoxin together at the bookstore. When she overhears that In Hao's daughter will be watching a movie with their neighbor, the same woman who has a crush on In Hao, Ziying's heart tightens with jealousy. Later at work, seeing In Hao still at his desk, she tries to sound indifferent but can't hide her irritation. She snaps at him, telling him to finish the work tomorrow since he clearly has other plans. Her coldness confuses and hurts In Hao deeply. That night, both stay late at the office. In Hao gathers the courage to finally confess his feelings, but just as he's about to speak, a call comes in from the female neighbor. Hearing her name, Ziying's expression hardens, and she leans back in her chair, pretending not to care. Disheartened, In Hao ends the call and looks at Ziying one last time, hoping she'll say something, but her silence only deepens the distance between them. With a heavy heart, he turns and walks out of the office, leaving behind the unspoken words hanging in the quiet air. Standing by the window, Ziying lets the soft evening breeze brush against her face as she recalls every moment she shared with In Hao. His gentle voice, the warmth in his eyes, and how everything between them slowly turned into something deeper. Realizing that she should stop running away from her feelings and fight for him, she suddenly rushes out of the room with determination. Meanwhile, In Hao is already on his way to meet her. Remembering his friend's advice that love requires courage and that true regret comes only from never trying, he turns his car around and heads back toward the company, ready to face his emotions. By chance, the two cross paths without realizing it. Ziying has just left home, and In Hao passes by only moments later. Thinking he has missed his chance again, In Hao returns to the office and notices Ziying's computer screen still open to a movie she planned to watch that evening. At that moment, he understands that she too must care for him. Both begin searching for each other restlessly around the city, their hearts guiding them more than logic. When Ziying calls and tells him not to go to the movie, In Hao insists he will. Then, suddenly, the blaring car horn she hears through the phone matches one nearby. She turns, and there he is. In that instant, In Hao runs toward her, his steps heavy with emotion, and pulls her into a tight embrace. No words are needed. Both finally understand each other's hearts. That night marks the beginning of their secret relationship. Ziying, now both a boss and a woman in love, insists that no one in the company can know about them. But In Hao, overwhelmed by happiness, sometimes forgets to hide his feelings. One day, in a moment of excitement, he even pulls down the curtain in Ziying's office while people are still around. Embarrassed, he quickly regrets it, but Ziying can't help smiling. To her, his clumsy affection feels sincere and endearing. Later, the two meet an important candidate, Ms. Zhang, a respected lawyer facing the closure of her firm. To balance her work and family, Ms. Zhang makes two requests. She wants to leave by 4 every afternoon unless a case demands otherwise, and she asks for 2 junior lawyers to assist her. Ziying finds these demands difficult, especially given the company's tight structure. Wanting to understand her situation better, she visits Ms. Zhang's office the next day, only to find her bringing her young son to work. It turns out Ms. Zhang is going through a painful divorce. Her husband accuses her of caring more about work than family, and now she's fighting for custody of her son. Torn between being a good mother and a successful professional, she blames herself for not doing enough in either role. Hearing her story and how gently reassures her, saying that being a good mother doesn't mean giving up everything. Doing her best already makes her admirable. His words remind him of his own past. On the way back, he recalls the day his daughter's mother left them. Feeling trapped and suffocated, she had walked away, leaving him to raise their child alone. Though it was painful, the experience made him stronger and more compassionate. Over the years, he learned to balance love, responsibility, and resilience, growing into the man he is today. He mentions that two people helped him become who he is. One gave him professional guidance, and the other, though unnamed, is clearly Ziying's late father, who once offered him a chance when no one else would. Meanwhile, their secret romance doesn't stay hidden for long. Xu Lixi, Ziying's loyal friend and colleague, begins to notice the subtle glances and quiet gestures between them. From her point of view, this relationship feels wrong. Knowing Ziying's painful past, how she lost her parents young and worked tirelessly to earn respect, Xu worries that being involved with a man who already has a child will only invite judgment and gossip. She doesn't want to see Ziying, who finally achieved success through hard work, risk everything for love. Deep down, Xu simply hopes that her friend will find someone who can give her a simple, open, and peaceful relationship, the kind of happiness Ziying truly deserves. Ziying deeply values her best friend Xu Lixi's concern, but she doesn't see Enhao's past or his daughter as a flaw. To her, that is simply part of his life, a life she has come to admire and cherish. She loves the man he has become, the one who carries warmth, kindness, and responsibility in everything he does. The next day, Ziying and Enhao meet Ms. Zhang again to discuss potential new job options that would suit her needs. However, just as Ziying is about to speak, Ms. Zhang announces her decision to resign and become a full-time mother. Though she knows her husband might use her lack of income against her in the custody battle, she feels she has no choice. Her young son, Taiyun, has expressed that he wants to live with his father. Wanting to stay close to her son, she sacrifices her career for now. Later that day, little Taiyun unexpectedly visits Ziying's office, asking her to help his mother find a better job. He overheard the conversation between the two women and wrongly believes that his presence is a burden to his mother. Moved by the child's sincerity, Ziying and Enhao help reconcile Ms. Zhang and her son, leading Ms. Zhang to regain her confidence and return to work. Meanwhile, Ziying and Enhao's relationship quietly deepens through their shared compassion and teamwork. One afternoon, Ziying is suddenly invited by the company's main investor, President Yu, to attend an interview with a candidate he personally favors. She remembers that some time ago, President Yu had asked her to recommend a young man with his last name for a position at the South Korean investment branch, a clear act of favoritism. Ziying had refused, unwilling to compromise her ethics. Offended, President Yu shifted his support to her rival, Jin Daebyo, and now organizes a party to flaunt his power and humiliate her. During the event, Ziying tries to leave quietly, but President Yu blocks her path and warns her to know her place. When she refuses to drink the wine he forces on her, the situation becomes tense. Just then, Enhao steps in, standing protectively behind her. Calmly, he introduces himself as her secretary and says he must cancel her schedule. He firmly leads Ziying away, saving her from further humiliation. Once outside, Ziying's emotions overflow, part embarrassment, part gratitude. She scolds Enhao for acting without her permission, but he responds firmly that if the same situation happens again, he will still protect her without hesitation, whether as her secretary or as her boyfriend. His sincerity instantly melts her anger, and that night, the two grow even closer, their bond stronger than ever. The next morning, they act as if nothing happened, maintaining a professional distance at work. Yet the tension in the elevator speaks louder than words. Soon after, Ziying receives a new assignment to evaluate a struggling company called Menhu Web, whose profits have sharply declined over the past 3 years. Investors now demand new leadership and have asked 2 top firms, including Ziying's, to recommend a capable representative. When Ziying and Enhao meet the newly appointed representative, he greets them with arrogance and sarcasm. Knowing about Ziying's relationship with her secretary, he mocks them openly and predicts that their company will soon collapse due to her lack of control. Enhao refuses to stay silent. He calmly tells the man that he understands his personality well, proud, stubborn, and reckless, which is exactly why he's always losing control. His confident response surprises everyone, and Ziying can't help but find him even more charming in that moment. However, as the selection process continues, the new representative secretly manipulates the system by using his personal ties with President Yu and the investors to secure his preferred list of candidates. Meanwhile, Enhao, who is quietly investigating his past and the person who once changed his life, finally discovers the truth. The daughter of the man who helped him years ago is none other than Ziying herself. And just like that, everything between them, fate, gratitude, and love, begins to connect in a way neither of them had ever expected. At that time, only In-hao was home alone when the thick smoke from his dream suddenly jolts him awake. Panicking, he rushes to the door to escape, but the collapsed fuel tank has already blocked the exit. His faint cries for help are drowned out by the roaring flames and the noise of people escaping outside. Just as he's about to lose consciousness, Jiying's father suddenly appears, breaking into the burning room. He manages to rescue In-hao and hands him over to the firefighters before being caught in a massive explosion that takes his life. Jiying, who had already lost her mother at a young age, becomes an orphan overnight. Her greedy relatives, more concerned about money than family, refuse to take her in. But years later, when Jiying becomes successful in her career, those same relatives shamelessly claim they raised her and constantly ask her for financial help. One day, through Suri, a colleague, In-hao learns the truth about Jiying's father's sacrifice. Overwhelmed with guilt, he struggles to face her. Meanwhile, he accidentally answers a call meant for Jiying and discovers that she's out on a date with his daughter. Hearing their cheerful conversation leaves him conflicted, and later he joins them at the mall. The three of them spend the day together, laughing and enjoying each other's company like a family. However, on the way home, Jiying notices that In-hao seems unusually quiet and troubled. The next day, In-hao takes a day off work and avoids Jiying's calls. He goes to visit her father's memorial, silently thanking him for saving his life and promising to take care of Jiying for the rest of his days. That evening, he meets her at her house. Standing before her large but lonely home, he feels a wave of sadness for everything she has endured. Gathering his courage, he takes her hand and tells her the truth, that the child her father saved in the fire years ago was him. Shocked and heartbroken, Jiying lets go of his hand and steps back. She cannot process the truth, and the relationship that once brought them both happiness suddenly turns cold. The next morning, she hides her red, swollen eyes behind large sunglasses despite the cloudy weather. Even her co-workers notice the tension between them. Later that day, Jiying finally confronts In-hao. Her pain spills out as she accuses him of forgiving the man who destroyed her family, the man she had hated her entire life. Torn between love and resentment, she admits she can't escape the emotional turmoil caused by her past. After some time, Suri reaches out to In-hao and reminds him that the reason he is alive and successful today is because of two people, his own father and Jiying's father. Suri's words strike deeply, reminding him of the promise he made long ago to never give up on life. When Jiying later hears this, she feels comforted. She visits her father's ancestral hall, talking to his spirit about her struggles, her success, and how much she still misses him. The next morning at work, In-hao still fears that Jiying resents him. But when the elevator doors open and their eyes meet, everything becomes clear. She has forgiven him. Jiying softly tells him that she's proud he grew up to be such a good person, as if reassuring her father's sacrifice was not in vain. Gathering her courage, she takes In-hao's hand in front of all their co-workers and officially announces their relationship, leaving everyone stunned. However, their happiness doesn't last long. Jiying's company soon faces two serious crises. First, her late rival, Representative Jin, schemes to seize control of the future company project and orders his men to set fire to Director Jin's office, one of Jiying's trusted colleagues. Meanwhile, a disgruntled former employee named Jung Nam, who was fired by Jiying, secretly sides with Representative Jin while pretending he has left the headhunting industry. Soon after, Director Jin accidentally reveals some confidential details about the company's candidate selection process. However, he quickly realizes his mistake when, at a nearby cafe, he spots Jung Nam, a former employee who had been fired by Jiying, secretly trying to approach other staff members. Suspicious of his motives, Director Jin immediately informs In-hao, and together they decide to turn the situation to their advantage. They plan to use the rival's greed to expose him, so Director Jin pretends to leak more information, hoping to lure Representative Jin into a trap. Meanwhile, Jiying and her team work tirelessly to uncover why the future company has failed to recover in recent years. After thorough research, they discover that the real problem lies in the company's internal imbalance. While programmers receive most of the credit and rewards, non-technical employees are ignored and underpaid, creating deep resentment within the staff. Realizing that harmony among workers is the key to revival, Jiying boldly recommends 3 highly skilled HR professionals who can rebuild trust between departments. Her strategy works perfectly. Representative Jin, who had expected an easy victory, finds himself completely outplayed as Jiying's proposal wins over everyone. She celebrates the success by treating her team to dinner, marking another proud moment in her career. However, the next morning brings unexpected trouble. A biopharmaceutical company that had recently approached Jiying with a lucrative deal suddenly becomes the center of a major fraud scandal. The company, which promised to pay her in original shares, collapses overnight when its CEO disappears with 20 billion won. As the news spreads, Ziying becomes the target of public criticism and media pressure. Just when she feels completely cornered, Enhao steps in to support her, standing by her side during police questioning and shielding her from reporters. Afterwards, Ziying temporarily moves into Enhao's house for safety, and his daughter Xiaoxin warmly accepts her as family. The next morning, the three share a peaceful breakfast together, their quiet smiles hinting at a brighter future. Yet at work, things remain tense. With the company under investigation, the staff relocates to a nearby bookstore to continue their operations. During this time, Ziying uncovers a deeper conspiracy linking the fraud case to her old rival, Representative Jin. He had orchestrated everything out of jealousy and revenge. When Ziying finally confronts him, she calmly reveals that she has always known the truth about the investment fraud incident 5 years ago. The former company head had taken the blame to protect Representative Jin. Yet, despite holding such powerful knowledge, she never used it against him. Her integrity and courage leave him speechless, marking the beginning of his downfall. After their confrontation, Representative Jin begins to see Ziying as arrogant and self-righteous. Feeling humiliated, he becomes determined to drag her down with him, wanting to prove that she's no different from him. He coldly mocks her, saying that once her company collapses, no one will stand by her side. Later, when Ziying returns to the office, those words echo in her mind, making her wonder if she really is fighting this battle alone. But when she walks into the small bookstore where her colleagues have temporarily set up work, she's deeply moved to see them still working hard for her and the company. Their loyalty gives her strength again. Grateful for their support, Ziying thanks everyone sincerely. Afterwards, Director Jin advises her to step down as the company's representative, explaining that their firm has lost its credibility in the industry and that holding on to her position might only hurt the employees further. Though his words sting, Ziying understands his concern. The next morning, after much thought, she decides to resign for the sake of the team's future. She hands her position over to her old rival, Representative Jin, believing this sacrifice is the only way to protect her people. That night, Enhao walks Ziying home. On the way, she quietly tells him about the official meeting set for the next morning. Enhao reminds her that she once said she wanted to protect everyone in the company, and Ziying replies that even if she keeps her position, things can never go back to how they were. She just wants her employees to have a stable future. Moved by her sincerity, Enhao takes her hand and promises to stay by her side no matter what. The following day, Ziying officially announces her resignation. Her employees, unable to hold back their emotions, beg her not to leave. Even Dason, the president's son, pleads with his father to spare Ziying's position, though his efforts fail. Soon after, Ziying signs the acquisition papers with Representative Jin and quietly steps away from the company she built. Meanwhile, life takes a happier turn for Ziying and Enhao. They begin spending more time together, sharing meals, shopping, and enjoying the simple peace they had longed for. On the other hand, karma catches up with Representative Jin. He's exposed as the true mastermind behind the fraud and is fired by the board. Later, to celebrate Enhao's success after being acquired by a larger firm, Ziying hosts a dinner for her old colleagues. During the gathering, she surprises them by inviting everyone to join her new company. With laughter and renewed purpose, they start fresh together. And fittingly, their very first client is Enhao. In the end, Mr. Seo joyfully becomes a parent, while Enhao, once Ziying's loyal secretary, finally becomes her husband. Their story closes on a hopeful note, marking a new beginning filled with love, trust, and second chances.